And welcome into a new episode of the Illini Cast. This is going to be our season recap video. And thank you for watching live with us. If you are on YouTube or on Twitter, thank you for watching. This is the Illini Cast, part of the Armchair Illini Network. Just look up in the top corner if I'm pointing the right direction.
Right
It's
there.
tough to point. Yep, it's like the mirror thing. But yes, Armchair Illini. Go check them out. There's some great articles about all the breaking news for Illini athletics, and we'll get some guys on our podcast frequently throughout this offseason to talk about the latest news for Illini sports in total. But this is the season recap episode of the Illini Cast, and the Illini fans have a lot to be thankful for this season. Yes, it didn't end in a Final Four, but man, they were dang close at an Elite Eight UConn team that is just simply a bulldozer that refuses to be stopped by anyone. So they will probably be the national champions, if not something weird happened with probably DJ Burns or Zach Edey, and we'll see what happens there. But the Illini were Big Ten tournament champions, finished in the top four of the Big Ten, getting a double bye in the Big Ten tournament and going to an Elite Eight. So very successful season. Brad Underwood got the monkey off of his back of getting out of the first weekend of the NCAA tournament. So, Sonny, let's start out with here. We're going player by player, but let's just get an overall view. What grade would you give this Illini basketball season, similar to what we did for the football season?
Easy A. I'd have to go back and take a look at the season preview episode, but I'm pretty sure I said our ceiling was Elite Eight, if not Final Four. I don't recall right off the bat, but even if I had said Final Four, I truly think we were the third best team in this tournament. We just ran into a bracket issue where we went up against UConn. I think we would have beaten Clemson. I think we can beat Alabama. I think we could have beaten Duke. I think we can beat NC State. There's one team we for sure, if we played them 10 times, we would lose 9 times, and that was UConn. And that's not looking down upon Illinois. I think most of the teams would lose to UConn more often than not when playing against them. I just considering all the expectations we had coming into the season, Brad Underwood kind of rebuilt this team almost entirely. And knowing that, like, and we didn't know who Marcus Domask were. We barely knew who Justin Harmon was. We knew the name Quincy Guerrier, but we weren't sure how all these names were going to fit in, especially compared to what I now can look back and call last year kind of being a stinker, a disaster type of season. So if you had told me, on basketball season eve that, hey, you want to find out how the Illini did this year, and I'd be like, yeah, okay. And they said, okay, Elite Eight run, you're going to win 29 games, I think. Uh, Absolutely, I'll take it. Where your best player is going to be gone for 6 games in the middle of the season. Other guys are going to step up. You're going to have two or three guys in the All Big Ten team. I would have absolutely taken it then, and I'm going to give it an A.
Yes, this is definitely an A season for the Illini. Going backwards, starting at the beginning of the year, you thought, man, they lost to Marquette. You thought that, man, that might be the game where you're like, man, that's the top five. Early on in the season, you lost to Tyler Kolek. Then you had the Marcus Damas game with 33 against Florida Atlantic in Madison Square Garden. You beat them, who kind of fell off a cliff at the end of the year, but you got them at the right time when they were the number 11 team in the country. Then you had a tough game in Knoxville against Dalton Connect and that Elite Eight team in Tennessee, 86-79. Just couldn't stop Dalton Connect defensively. But then you had the 30 burger that Terrence Shannon Jr. had against Missouri, which would be the last game up until home against Rutgers that he would play in after the suspension, and then it would be uplifted. Then in that stretch, in that weird stretch where Terrence Shannon wasn't available, you battled back from down infinity to Purdue at West Lafayette. You only lost 83-78 to that team. Then you beat a tough Michigan State team, which was a tournament team. Maryland was a loss. That was kind of the one where you're like, uh-oh, is the tide starting to turn now without Terrence Shannon on this lineup? and then Michigan happened, and then Rutgers, you got Terrence Shannon back again against Rutgers. So just a weird stretch there, and then you battled pretty hard. Had a few clunkers in there with the Penn State game, and then some weird halves in the Big Ten tournament. But my goodness, overall, a positive season with Terrence Shannon leading you into becoming a first round style player in the NBA draft. And then Coleman Hawkins, Mr. Everything, some guy we didn't talk about too much. I think this is nothing but an A, and you were just in the wrong bracket on the East to go to the Final Four. It was really on what round a team is going to get destroyed by UConn. I mean, heck, if a Purdue and UConn matchup happened, I saw a sports book that said UConn would be 7.5 point favorites in that game.
Wow.
So that is the domination that UConn is having. It's a lot like the Diana Taurasi UConn women years, where they are just like the most dominant team in college basketball. So kudos to Hurley on that. But A for the Illini on this season.
And like the basics look great. Again, at 29 wins, Elite Eight, all that. But if you listen to college basketball media in general, the Illini were arguably the most fun team to watch this season. And that's something we haven't really gotten before. Normally Brad Underwood teams are known for their, fantastic defense. And usually we have a couple players here and there who kind of lead our offense. But this year, with the new 5 out system, the booty ball that Brad Underwood kind of incorporated from last year, we were an entertaining, we were the most entertaining game almost every single night. And that's not just in the Big Ten. I'm talking about nationwide, just scoring 80, 85, 90 points almost on a nightly basis. It's
We averaged 84.4 points per game, which was just incredible as a team. Number one in the country in Ken Palm offense. Just unreal in terms of the analytics after the basic stats, like you said.
And that's the stat which I think more than anything else would have surprised me if you told me in the preseason. Again, with all these unknowns that we have, to have tell me essentially for a big part of the season we'd be the number one offense in the entire country. Only I think in the last game we were overtaken by the juggernaut UConn we kind of keep talking about. That I surely would not have believed in. If you told me we made an Elite Eight run, I would have believed it because you know what, we're kind of due for one. And I knew Illinois as a program that should almost be an expectation at this point, a Sweet 16, and then let's make an Elite Eight every now and then. But to have the number one offense in the country, that would have floored me if you had told me that before the season started.
All right, we are going to go player by player on giving them a grade on this Illini basketball season. We'll start from the bottom of the points per game and go up. But AJ Red and Max Williams, thank you for your contributions this year. You guys were great in cleanup time. Not really much to say about you two, but definitely part of the team. And you need those kind of guys. So kudos to you guys for holding the bench down and making these other guys better in practice. But we'll start with Nico Moretti, who played in 18 games, had 5.9 minutes per game, and man, he had a big game against Iowa at home. What were your thoughts on his season so far? This his season as a whole.
Nico, like, I mean, he's almost there at the incomplete, kind of like the other two are. But I think in regards to expectations, he probably met them. He did have a good game here and there. Um, I would probably just say C plus. Basically, Nico Moretti was this season what I was in school. Like I was there, and I did what I needed to do. We counted on him for some key minutes, in particular at the end of the regular season. He was still probably at the end of the year one of our only ball handlers. I'm obviously he was a little undersized, and Big Ten defenses kind of took advantage of that at some point. But I'll give him a C plus.
He is the guy that the rest of the group in the group presentation just told him, "Hey, just show up to the presentation. We've got you." And then that game against Iowa, um, that was his line. He said his line perfectly. He sourced his quote, and boom, we got an A. We won that game. So Nico Moretti was that guy in that Iowa game during that weird shift change that Brad Underwood had. So I give him a C plus, and I can't wait to see if he's still around next year. Again, this I won't say that every single player that's might be returning because the transfer portal is just so crazy in and of itself. But I will say it right now that if Nico Moretti does come back, that is a very valuable asset for Brad Underwood and the strength and conditioning staff to continue to mold. So excited to see what he can do in the Illini uniform in the future. Dre Gibbs Lahorn, 28 games played, 7.1 minutes, 2.4 points per game. What were your thoughts on Dre Gibbs Lahorn?
I think I'd give him a B minus. From what I knew of him and what he was capable of doing, I thought he was going to be a spark plug, scoring off the bench type of player. I did not know he was this much of a dog on defense. I mean, when he was on the court compared to when Moretti was on the court for our point guard position, DGL was hounding the opposition, and you can tell making them uncomfortable, which to me raises the ceiling of what I think DGL can one day be. So I'm gonna go with a B minus.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with C plus on Dre Gibbs Lahorn. I thought there was gonna be a little bit more athleticism because I saw him compared to Sky Clark and before Sky Clark's injury. So I was expecting a little bit more athleticism, a little bit more cutting to the rim. Um, but those two threes that he made in the Moorhead State game kind of righted the ship, kind of gave Illinois some confidence as well. So I'll give him a C plus just because he is a freshman and he did what he had to do. He didn't. There was no game where Drake Gibbs Lahorn was like, "Oh, he cost Illinois the game." There was never any of that. So C plus, great work, Drake Gibbs Lahorn.
By the way, we have about 65 people watching across all platforms. Leave your comments on your grades in the comment section as well. We can, Austin and I, when we get a chance, we'll kind of go through all of them and see what you guys think. And of course, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button.
Another freshman, Amani Hansberry, dealt with some injury issues. 19 games played, 7.5 minutes per game, and averaged 2.4 points per game. This one's a little bit weird for me because of expectations I feel for Amani were sky high going in. But then when you saw the season actually play out, that you didn't need an Amani Hansberry too terribly much with the performances of Dane Danger and Coleman Hawkins and just the small ball way that Brad Underwood played at times. So it's very tough for me to grade Amani Hansberry. I think I might go with a C on it, but if I was giving it a curve, I might say C plus. So very weird season for Amani with expectations and actual watching of the basketball where he didn't have to do that much to for Illinois to be successful.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of echo those thoughts. And it's funny, the first three or four guys we've listed, we've given C's and a low B to, and you're kind of be wondering like how did this team win 29 games, but it kind of shows you that how not deep this team in effect was. I earlier in the season, at least in the season preview, I was touting how deep I thought this team was going to be, but when it really turned out not being the case. With Hansberry, I think he was like he had a good stretch. I think it was in December, maybe it was in January, where he was almost the first big off the bench, in place of Danger when Danger was kind of struggling. So I'll probably go with the C plus as well. It'd probably be a C if I was judging it based on my preseason expectations, but I just don't think he got much time on the court. Brad just kind of chose to play a different lineup and a different style of play. So I don't even know if he was offered the opportunity to really showcase his skills as much as he could have.
Brad's whole mantra of stay old and play old is just so true with how the season played out. He did not trust a lot of the guys deep down on his bench. He only played around 7, maybe 8 guys if foul trouble happened on a nightly basis in the Big Ten. A little bit deeper during that Terrence Shannon situation, but that's kind of how he played, and I can't really blame Amani for the way Brad wanted to play. And again, it's one of those situations where Amani didn't really cost Illinois a game. There wasn't like a 4-minute stretch where Amani just shot horribly and that was the reason why Illinois fell behind in the game. So, again, not costing Illinois games, that means you get a C at least. Justin Harmon, 38 games played. This is kind of where the shift kind of changes to games played and minutes played. Justin Harmon, 18.7 minutes per game. What were your thoughts on Justin Harmon's season?
See, and now this is going to be my thoughts on probably the next couple of guys that we're going to be discussing. Like Justin Harmon was huge in that stretch that Terrence Shannon was not on the court for his, off the court troubles. He certainly had his mistakes. He certainly had his plays where he just, I mean, at the end of the season, I don't think, I felt like he was afraid to shoot the ball. But he was hustling out there. He played his defense. I'm going to go with B minus.
For Justin Harmon, I'm going to go with a C minus for him. I feel like the production was not there fully at times near the end of the season. He was just kind of a ghost out there, just occupying space and occupying minutes where he wasn't giving you much. There wasn't many three pointers made at the very end of the year. Defensively, there was sort of a liability issue with the way Justin Harmon played. And I feel like Drake Gibbs could have played a little bit more than Justin Harmon down the stretch, just based on how they played. Um, Rebounding wise, Justin really didn't give you much either toward the end of the year. And then assist wise, 1.1 assists per game. I think that should be a little bit higher with the size of a guy like that. And knowing who you had as shooters and Marcus Damask and Terrence Shannon. So I think he is my harshest critique this year at a C minus, based on everything, all based on the expectations and how he played early on and how that downward trend kind of hit toward the end of the year.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, that's a little low for me. I just think, his offensive, I think he had a 20-point game when with Terrence gone. At the end of the season, like Brad still trusted him on the court, and that usually meant that he was making the right defensive plays. And for a team so much geared towards their offense, Brad had a couple of guys who he was still able to count to put out a defensive effort. And so, but yeah, I mean that's interesting.
I will say this though, in a game like the Iowa State game where you struggle to make free throws, Justin Harmon over the entire season shot 91.5% from the free throw line, which is just outstanding for a team that kind of struggled at times beyond for the free throw line. Another interesting case is a guy by the name of Luke Goody, 38 games played, 20.1 minutes per game, and 5.7 points per game. This one is going to be a tough one, Sonny. What's your grade?
I think this, compared to my preseason expectations, I think Goody is probably the one that's going to get the worst grade, and I'm going to give him probably a C minus, just because I thought he was going to play like a very crucial role, be a double digit scorer, make multiple threes a game, and a lot of the losses that we had this particular season was, you know, defense is just essentially taking advantage of his inability to really guard anybody, in particularly down low. Now, is Brad to blame for some of that? Sure, maybe, but Goody, I think, also is a guy who at one point in the season just kind of had lost his confidence, and I was expecting a little bit more from him. Double digit score minimum. I was planning on him being the sixth guy, the sixth man, first guy off the bench, and he's probably my most disappointing grade.
It was weird. The ebbs and flows of Brad Underwood trusting Luke Goody was interesting to watch. There were games like Penn State where he had 22 minutes, shot 3 for 5 from the 3 point line, 9 points. Then on February 28th against Wisconsin, he only played 3 minutes and was 1 for 2 from the field. So it was a weird ebb and flow season for Luke Goody, and it was shocking to see from a veteran like Luke that you thought he's pretty much gained Underwood's trust and was going to maintain that throughout the entire season, be that bench guy, even because of the talent that's around Illinois right now. And I thought there was going to be a little bit more production out of him, but you don't win a Big Ten tournament title without Luke Goody because he did have 12 points against Nebraska. And you look at him against Morehead State, 9 points. And then that Iowa State game, you don't win that Iowa State game without Luke Goody as well. So he showed up in the most clutch times this year that you desperately needed a knockdown shooter. But overall, it was kinda disappointing, like you said, that he wasn't able to maintain that. Like, he should have made 1 3 a game, is my kind of expectation for Luke, and there were moments where he didn't shoot one, and you have to rebound and make three-pointers if you're Luke Goody, and there were some times that he only was doing rebounding in the moments that Brett Underwood trusted him in the middle of the season. So, I've gotta go with a C just because of the clutch moments that he had, in against Nebraska and against Iowa State.
Luke is probably the one guy who I'm most interested in seeing what he decides to do this offseason. Like I can see him wanting to stay. At least mid-season, there were some kind of rumors that maybe because he was kind of in the doghouse of the coaching staff that he may not be playing for us next year. But I feel like he got himself out of that doghouse, and he had some really, as you already mentioned earlier, some important plays that really helped us. Um, get to the levels that we had not reached before. And so he's one of the main guys. I'm actually kind of curious, along with Sincere, on what their status is going to be next year, whether they're a Illini or not.
I
Uh,
am in I am intrigued to see what the addition of Jake Davis does to Luke Goody's mindset on whether he's sticking around. They are very similar players in how they operate. Both knockdown shooters. Maybe Jake has a touch more athleticism, but he'll have to show that on the rebounding side of things in the Big Ten, the physicality that Luke kind of showed toward the end of the year. But that's the one guy that I'm like, man, Jake Davis might be the Luke Goody heir apparent.
Check it out. It says not Goody's fault. I'm assuming that he didn't score as much. His teammates rarely passed him the ball.
Yes and no. I mean, there were moments where you saw Luke open, but whenever you see Marcus Damask do what he does near the rim and Terrence Shannon do what he does and Coleman with the mismatches that he has, it is tough to just be like, you know what? This is about a 70% likelihood that I'll get fouled or make a shot compared to kicking it out where Luke has struggled at times with the 3-point line. So this was a weird season for Luke, and I hope that he does come back because Illinois is going to need some shooters next year, especially with a guy like Mraz Johnson coming in who doesn't shoot the ball too terribly well. So you're going to need shooters around these athletic guys that are going to be around this roster next year. Next up, we've got a guy that transferred out. Maybe could come back. You never know. The portal opens both ways. But Dane Danger, 38 minutes, 38 games played, pardon me, 10 minutes a game, and averaged 6.1 points per game. But that tracker that I had for Justin Harmon, it was the exact opposite for Dane. He was on the rocket ship near the end of the year.
Yeah, I'd probably give him a B minus. He's another guy who I thought would play more minutes, but that was before I knew, and I think that was probably before Brad knew what kind of system he was going to install for the Illini that would make us the most efficient offense in the country. It was just kind of a bad fit, but at the same time, I talked about this in multiple, episodes previous. Like even when he wasn't getting off the bench, or if he was only getting off the bench for 3-4 minutes at a time, he'd make a mistake and he'd have to sit back down. Unlike some players from our last year's team, like you never saw him sulk, you never saw him pout. He was always a good teammate, just sitting there waiting for his chance, waiting for his opportunity. And those opportunities came at the end of the season. He was one of our most important players, in particular in the Big Ten tournament. He was a mid-major demolisher in the first two rounds of the NCAA tournament, and you kind of really got to see him showcase his skills. And especially with this now transfer portal announcement, I think the last month of the season really earned Dane Danger a good amount of money for what he's about to get this summer.
I mean, it had to be vomit inducing to be on the tilt-a-whirl that Dane Danger was on throughout this season. I mean, Maryland, he had 10 minutes, Michigan, 3, Rutgers, 6, Northwestern in overtime. He only played 1 minute in that game. Then go to Ohio State on January 30th, 11. Then you go back down to 2 minutes on February 17th and February 21st in that loss against Penn State. And then you're back up to double digit minutes in Iowa, Minnesota, and Wisconsin. And then you kind of take over in the Big Ten tournament. And then you're playing multiple minutes instead outside of the UConn game. That is just unbelievable. So I gotta say that this is a C plus, B minus, right? It's close, just because of how he handled his situation. But at the same time, you didn't really need him at times in the Big Ten just because of how they played.
Jay checking in. Thank you. What a great season. Had a lot of fun watching them. Yeah. And, we kind of said that at the beginning of the year. It may or may not have been the best team the Illini have had in a very, very long time. But in my opinion, that there's no debate that was the most fun team to watch since at least that '05 team.
Absolutely. I mean, I was in fifth grade for the '05 team, so this one, now that I have like an adult memory and like knowing and understanding, it just felt so good to watch this team. It made me tear up at times. Uh, it made me smile. Like in the Midwest winters, if your Big Ten team is good, it makes the winter so much better, as opposed to those John Gross and Bruce Weber teams where winters were long and winters were brutal. This winter flew by, it felt like.
Check it out. Checking in. Hope that Danger gets paid. He wasn't a good fit for this team. And that's kind of the consensus. That's all I've been saying. A lot of people didn't like that I said that on X, and they've been kind of going back and forth with me, kind of putting the blame more on Brad. And I'm not saying Brad isn't one of the reasons that Danger didn't have as successful of a season as he could have, but the path Brad was picking essentially was working. We were the second best team in the Big Ten. We had an insanely efficient offense, and it's simply you saw him anytime he came on the court for a big part of the season. You could see him make some mental mistakes. Some defensive lapses. He's not a very vocal guy like Coleman Hawkins is. Always calling out screens and this and that. Danger, it's not in his nature to do it, and so that's something he kind of had to learn, and he hasn't learned that so much. But Danger is a guy who I think, if he goes to a mid major, I saw him visiting Memphis. He's a guy that can easily be, all conference first team, scoring 20 points, 10 rebounds. And then we're going to kind of have to circle back and answer to the Illini crowd about, why did we let him go, this and that. But
Oh, he's not getting drafted, so it's not gonna be like Brandon Pajimski, so I'm not too worried about that.
But I still think he's going to destroy the college level, especially if he goes down a notch. I'm hoping he stays out of the Big Ten just because I don't want to deal with it. I know, like a couple of my Ohio State friends, Michigan State friend want to have Danger come visit and have him wearing their colors, and I really don't want to deal with the Danger revenge game against Brad. But I have no regrets. I think Brad's making the right call, and for a guy who enjoys Danger and the way he plays, I think Danger selfishly is making the right call.
Next up, we have Ty Rogers, 38 games played, 22 minutes a game, 6.2 points per game, which scoring is not going to be a huge factor in Ty Rogers' game, but this one's going to be weird. I don't know what this grade will be. I'm still racking my brain on what I would give Ty Rogers. Let's go to you, Sonny, first.
Cheater. Um, I'm gonna go with B because everything that we knew Ty Rogers can do, Ty Rogers did really really well. In particular in his sophomore year, he extended many plays on the offensive rebound angle. He played solid defense, mainly better help defense than one-on-one defense. And there's, I feel like I can think of a half dozen plays in individual games where you can see him making that hustle play kind of brought up the energy level of the rest of the team. The way Dennis Rodman used to, or the way Joakim Noah used to for the Bulls teams. But he was essentially useless against those big guys. Like the fact that in today's day and age, you have a basketball player, no matter what size, not shoot a single 3 pointer says something. Zach Edey shot two or three pointers this year, and Ty Rodgers just hasn't. I don't think he shot one his entire college career, and that's something which, as much as I enjoy Ty, and this will be a conversation we can have for later. Like, I wonder how much time we can give him. Whether he will always deserve starter minutes with his complete inability to develop really any sort of offensive game besides the I'm going to put my head down and take it to the rim.
I mean, you kinda have to hope that his trajectory is kind of like, Demonte Williams. That Demonte Williams season where he had a three-pointer pretty much every few games, where that was shocking because he didn't attempt many at all in his early stages of his career. Ty has only shot one three-pointer in his career. That was his freshman year, 0 for 1. You hope that he's in the gym just shooting 1,000 jump shots this year, this offseason.
I mean, I think he
And
can do it. Like, he improved his free throw shooting.
right.
I think he started off the season shooting like 30%, but then at the end of the year, like, the average went up. So the mechanics are there. I just wonder right now if it's just simply a confidence issue. And the confidence issue is just going to be fixed by what you just said. Spending every day in the gym, shooting 1,000 jump shots every single day, and just trusting yourself that, as long as you do the right motion, have the right follow through, that the ball is going to go in.
I mean, this is a guy that was 3rd in rebounding as a team on the team. That's pretty impressive for a guy that's asked to do so much on the basketball court. So I think I'm going to give him a B minus just because of how he rebounded the ball and gave second chances to the likes of Terrence Shannon and Marcus Damask. But man, the offense leaves so much to be desired, and you can't play 5-on-4 at all times if you don't have a guy like Terrence Shannon next year. So you got to hope that there's some sort of scoring output boost coming in. And I think that would help out a lot. He did average 2 assists per game, which was nice to see as well, passing the rock to the likes of Domask and Terrence. But man, that has to change to build a more complete team next year. Let's go to Quincy Guerrier,
Before we get to
30.
Quincy, we do have a
Yes.
couple comments. Jen chiming in, and Jen, I saw your comment earlier, but I'm just going to circle back to that at the end of the show. Ty, love him, love his heart, hope he stays. Uh, I agree. I mean, no one can question his passion and his hustle. And as I said, like everything we know and heard about Ty coming into like from high school, that's shown out. Like, he is a dog. He hustles. He's a grinder. It's unfortunately some of the other things like Jay mentions here. Ty needs to develop some kind of shot. It's a must. Yeah, just I don't know, show him a bunch of Terrence Shannon, video of crashing the rim, or have him develop a baby hook or something like that. Like that Damask essentially did. I don't know what it is, but he just needs something that he trusts and he has confidence in. Jay, again, if Ty could shoot, he probably wouldn't be here. He'd probably be in the NBA. Yeah, well, if he'd like to make the NBA, then he needs to work on that shot.
Yes. It's a chicken and the egg situation. Obviously, the egg came first in this situation where the jump shot has to develop. So that's got to happen for Ty. It just is not a natural thing that just has in his pocket game to game. But
Mhm.
next, we have Quincy Guerrier, 38 games played, 24.2 minutes, and 9.6 points per game. I really struggle with Quincy. I'll do the grade here because I let you do Ty Rogers first, and that's not really fair. Um, I think this one actually might be my toughest grade. So Justin Harmon, you are you're out of here. You're out of the doghouse. I think I might give Quincy a C, the lowest C minus that you can possibly get. So whether it be
Mm.
79.8. There were moments where his defense didn't show up.
Does that
There were
math make
moments.
sense? Wait, 79.8, wouldn't that be the highest C you
Oh,
see you can
Yes,
get?
yes, there we go.
Awesome.
So 6 it's been a while since I've, looked at a grade book. 69.8.
Mm.
There we go. Um, I there were moments defensively where he did not show up. There were games where he was not taking shots, and if you're not playing defense and you're not taking shots, what are you doing on the basketball court? And the game against UConn, he's not the reason why Illinois lost, but there were some wide open Terrence Shannon looks that could have maybe changed momentum a little bit, made UConn think about something a little bit more, and not just gone on a 30 to nothing run. I think some of those shots that he took were inexcusable. He's like, I've been in an NCAA tournament, guys. I can handle this. That was kind of his mindset, it feels like. And he failed. And I think Quincy had some bright moments, yes. But whenever Terrence got back on the basketball court after that suspension, I don't know if it was injury or what, but he could not play in the same way that he did whenever Terrence was out for those games. So I got to give him a C minus.
All right, wow. He's another one of the players where who I kind of referenced earlier. His performance when Terrence was gone was so much needed. You know, I think he had a 20-point game in there himself too. He's long. Most games I thought he played pretty solid defense. He used his length. Um, my issues with Quincy was he was a senior who sometimes just mentally played like a sophomore, a guy who just
Mhm.
made mistakes and you're just like you should know better, like basically what we used to yell at Coleman Hawkins for always doing in his career. And so, but at the same time, like what he provided, especially during that stretch in I think it was what, late December early January, when Quincy shooting from the corner three-pointer was a splash every single time. You knew it, you had no doubts about it, you knew that was 3 points as soon as it left his fingertips. But then as the season progressed, and as you mentioned, essentially when Terrence Shannon came back, that confidence was gone. And then he just kind of seemed a little confused. There was rumors that he was in the doghouse with Brad Underwood. Um, so I think that's a fair grade. I would probably give the highest C plus. You're giving the lowest C minus. I'm going to give the highest C plus only because he's one of the main reasons I think in that 6 game stretch where Terrence was gone, you know, Quincy was arguably our second best player, and it was a stretch that we, you know, really needed him. Jay checking in. Quincy seemed to shine more when TSJ was out. He seemed to cut more to the basket, getting dunks and making threes.
Yeah, that was his game. He was kind of the guy that took the ball away from Marcus at times when you desperately needed it, and I thank him for that effort. But whenever you're a leader and an older player like that, you should be able to just find your place on the court and know how to play with no matter who's on the court with you. Whenever you've gone through so many transitions of playing at Oregon and playing at Syracuse, like this isn't the first time you've had to completely change over your entire identity as a basketball player. So that's kind of my concern with Quincy this year.
I didn't want to overlook this comment by RJ earlier. Purdue fan here. It sucks you got put into the East. The 4 best teams in the tournament have been UConn, Purdue, Illinois, and Tennessee. That should have been the final four. I didn't want to overlook that because obviously, Austin, you know that we don't have a very good history of Purdue fans chiming in on this show. Usually it's a lot more negative than that. And so, RJ, we appreciate you watching today. And thank you for that positive feedback. I said the same thing. I think Illinois was clearly the third best team playing once you know it got to the Elite Eight, and we ran up against a team that we're just not going to beat very very often. But that's just not an Illinois thing. That's a team that Illinois or UConn's going to beat most teams 8, 9, 10, 9 times out of 10.
Yeah, I mean, this was a seeding error by the tournament committee. There was a lot of them. The fact that Iowa State was also in UConn's bracket, the number one adjusted defensive team in the country, was there. San Diego State was in there. Auburn was in there. I mean, this was an unfriendly road for a UConn team that still is dominating teams. So kudos to UConn, but This bracket was awfully tough for them um, before the tournament. So um, they all should have been in different brackets, I believe.
And the
But
fact that UConn's just cakewalked over everyone, it just
yeah,
shows you how
yeah.
good they are. Yeah.
All right. The next three are going to be pretty high grades, I'm going to guess. We'll go with Coleman Hawkins next. 12.1 points per game in 31 minutes played. He played in 35 games, missed a few due to injury, but Coleman Hawkins possibly being at the end of the road of his Illini career. He basically all but said it after the UConn game. I know NIL can change things, but it feels like he's ready to go. He's been through different iterations in his career with Io DeSumo and Kofi Coburn and the Matthew Meyer year and this year. So I think he's kind of in that weird mindset of I've been there, done that many times. So this year, what's your grade for him?
I think I'm gonna give him a B plus, and it's a solid B plus. Not quite A level, but he just did so many things at a B plus level. And so I think it's the easiest grade for me to kind of give. He was an outstanding, defensive player for what he was capable of doing. He's no match for proper fives, and Brett, Brad, we know kind of left him out on an island against a lot of the guys that were bigger than he was, and that kind of made his stats look a little bit worse. But when it comes to facilitating, you know, uh, making the right passes, and at the end of the year, I don't know about you, but every time he took a shot from 3-point land, I was actually more confident that was going to go in than that he was going to miss. That's something which was probably one of the biggest question marks coming into this year. Whether he needed to develop that shot in order to make it to the next level, and he's one of those players where I think the practice that we're talking about Ty Rodgers needing to do the next offseason, that practice is what Coleman did this past offseason, and it kind of paid dividends. I think he was clearly our third best player, did kind of everything that we asked him to do. And I'm going to miss him because we're not going to see college basketball players like that much anymore. A guy who was decently ranked, but, had marginal production as a freshman, but just stayed with the program for 4 years, continued to develop a little bit by little bit every single year, and now he's leaving. As I think he was like third team all Big Ten. Am I right, or am I
Yeah,
wrong?
third team by the press, uh, and then honorable mention by the coaches.
Right. Like just that players these days, if things don't work out in the first year, they're gone. And if they don't work out by the second year, for sure they're gone. So he's just one who kind of stuck through the process. And, I wish he comes back. I hope he gets the feedback he wants and he makes it to the NBA. But if he doesn't get the feedback that he wants, I hope that the iFund can come together with a package that makes staying in college at least somewhat competitive, because I think him being in charge of Hansberry and Johnson and whatever other big we will probably land in the transfer portal, I think that could be a team that contends for the Big Ten next season as well.
I mean, going back into the archives of Coleman Hawkins' career, I mean, he's a guy that started out, didn't have to do that much as a freshman with Io DeSumo and Kofi Coburn in there. Then he had Kofi Coburn his second year, and then his third year, he was supposed to be the leader of the team, and he kind of succeeded in that role. He had tough personalities to deal with Sky Clark and Matthew Meyer, and this year he kind of helped Brad Underwood shape Marcus Damask and Justin Harmon and getting all these young guys to believe in the proper vision. It's just incredible to see his growth as a leader, not only just on the basketball court. It was just insane to see. So I really feel like he deserves an A with his off the court mentality, paired with his on court presence, like his defense, like his shooting ability, and just his rebounding ability as well. So I give him an A.
Jen says drop coverage with Coleman versus a five just didn't work. He was such a high IQ player, though, seemed to notice every detail about not only our team, but every opponent as well. and check it out once again. Chimes in. Oh, Coleman's a big loss for this team. Big shoes to fill. One of the few guys to make defensive stops. And let's also not forget that even as the tournament was going on, Coleman talked about, and I think he said he was only at about 60%. That whatever
Mhm.
injury that he had, which was very noticeable at the beginning of the season, I think we would have won the Marquette game had he been fully healthy. But you know, despite his he missed I think a week or maybe it was 2 week stretch early on in the season, and he came back kind of playing more like the improved Coleman Hawkins that we were hoping for. But it's only lately we found out that he was still dealing with that injury, and it's still something he's dealing with now. And so to get the production that we did out of him, the impact that we did out of him with the injury that he's playing with, just shows how much of a team player he is.
Absolutely. I mean, what Coleman was able to accomplish shooting 36.9 from beyond the 3-point line, what he was able to do points per game wise, 12.1, when the focus really wasn't always on him, where he had to kind of use his usage a lot and do it efficiently to score that many points per game, because you did have Terrence, you did have Marcus, who were the bulk of your usage, was just impressive to see. So Coleman definitely carved out a two-way contract with his play this year, and I can't wait to see him suit up in an NBA lineup, because I feel like he is going to have a long career because he does everything little that helps teams win games.
I hope so. I don't know, if his game's going to ultimately adjust to the NBA, but I'm going to root harder for him than I will, most guys in a that formerly used to wear an Illini uniform. Just again because of the story I told you, it's just he was
Mhm.
such a team player out throughout his career, and just an easy guy to root for. And Coleman, please come back.
Yes, that would be so huge to this team next year. But another guy that could potentially come back, Marcus Damask. It depends on the waiver. It depends on how lenient the NCAA wants to be. If the NCAA even cares anymore about anything, then Marcus may suit up for an Illini uniform again next year. But I will have to wait and see for that one. But Marcus Damask, 34 minutes per game, played in 38 of them, 15.9 points per game, played in all 40 minutes in that Iowa State game. Uh, I, I think that's a clear A plus for what he was expectations wise and what he's able to provide in this season.
Yeah, A plus for me too. I don't think he's our best player, but I think he was our most valuable player this season. He was the team MVP. Everything that he did, the levels that he reached when Terrence was gone in his little hiatus, and he basically, I wouldn't even say kept Illini afloat. Like he, all of a sudden, we switched our offense around a little bit, and we reached levels that we, as a program, haven't reached in a very long time when it comes to the offensive side of the basketball. Just all Big Ten. The style of play, like what Brad wanted to do with the whole booty ball. Marcus Domask, we saw what Javon Pickett did last year with it. Marcus Domask was almost an upgrade on what Pickett did last year. He was just constantly making the right plays. Of course, he was getting a little flack every now and then just because he's not a natural point guard. But I argue that because Marcus played as well as he did, everyone's perception that we needed a point guard ended up not really being a fault of the team. I think Marcus played just fine. This team ultimately, ironically, it wasn't the point guard that this team needed. It was probably more of a true five. And Marcus is just, it's one of those, yeah, I know the waiver's not likely. I know they've applied for it and they're not exactly optimistic on it, but should it happen, I mean, that would be amazing news and hopefully something, that would put us right up at the top for the Big Ten, preseason uh, media polls next year. But regardless of what it is, it's a shame that we only got to see Marcus in a orange and blue uniform for one season. I know you got to see him a couple times down at SIU, and genuinely, I'm super jealous.
Yeah, I mean, when I had season tickets for SIU and it was during Lance Jones and Marcus Damask, Marcus kind of dealt with what Iowa State gave him every single game. And he took it in stride and was one of the top scorers of all time in a Saluki uniform. He was able to pass the ball effectively. He gave Lance Jones a lot of open shots. And I was like, okay, this could be a solid six man for Illinois. I didn't know that Marcus was as skilled as he was at SIU. When you have a little freedom, when you have guys like Terrence Shannon at your disposal, like Coleman Hawkins, like Quincy, the floor opened up so much for him with booty ball, with his IQ, everything about him. And I just couldn't be more proud of how Marcus developed as a player this year and really was shown the spotlight. And I think he is going to make a lot of Missouri Valley players this offseason way richer because you can trust the Missouri Valley process, him and Lance Jones carrying the torch there. But I mean, it's just insane to see these Missouri Valley players now have this opportunity to showcase what they can do in the Big Ten and beyond.
And we know we've just talked about for a couple minutes his value on the court to what he provided the Illini. But to kind of piggyback on what you're saying is how much value now he's brought to the Illini off the court. Now this transfer portal season, we're all Brad has to do is look at and point at what Marcus Domask did on the court this year, and
Yeah,
let
I'm
you
sure Jake Davis saw a lot what Marcus Damask did.
and yeah, any Mountain Valley or Missouri Valley, whatever conference that we're talking about. Hey, look, we can put you in the right situation and make you, a star in the best conference in the country, and we can help you build your skill level, so that the whole nation notices. I think Marcus Damask has really ultimately turned into one of the best recruiting tools that Brad Underwood and the staff are going to have moving forward.
And the finale, Terrence Shannon Jr. 2 years in a Illini uniform, and I think it's safe to say that he is a top 7 Illini of all time. I will not hear any arguments against that. I firmly believe that in my soul. What he was able to do, scoring the most points in a season of any Illini in history, is just unreal. 23 points per game, played in 32 due to that suspension, 34 minutes per game. Was just an unbelievable player, made everybody better around him, and just carried the torch of Illini basketball himself at times, and was took control over games where you were like, I've never seen an Illini player just take control of a game like that. This is a clear A plus and just an unbelievable season, and Illinois fans are indebted to what Terrence has done to this program, for sure.
There's arguments, and now that we're in the off season, I'm sure we can save it for a future episode of where Terrence stands in the whole pantheon of Illini players. But what I will say is that when Terrence was playing at his peak powers, I think he was the greatest Illini that I had ever seen. It didn't happen every single game, but when he was on offensively, he was a guy who could be on defensively. Just a complete all around game is what he provided. Obviously, Zach Edey is the best player in college basketball, sure, but then the conversation becomes, Terrence Shannon Jr. and Dalton Connect. And, we've seen the damage Dalton Connect is doing. He's a fantastic player, but Terrence does it on both ends of the court. And to me, like that's why clearly he's the second best player in the country. For me, he's an easy A. He stepped up into the alpha role that we asked him to coming into the season. I think he was a little too, he kind of handed the reins too much to Matthew Meyer last year, and he wasn't as selfish and aggressive as he could have been. This year, that was not really the case. We had the third highest scorer in the country, and we didn't have to run any plays for him. Brad loves to talk about that. And just the consummate team player, of course, he dealt with the off the court issues, and hopefully, they'll be resolved one way or the other in May. But when he came back, he's every time he went on the road, he was dealing with as hostile of an environment as a young college kid can deal with. And he just continued to perform beyond any college basketball player in the country. And so He's played his last game for Illinois, and I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of career he has in the NBA because he's already built like an NBA player. He might fall a little bit in the draft when it comes just because of his age. I know he's a little older, but I think he can be one of those 3 and D guys, a wing that the NBA for the most part is basically switching over to anyway, and so I think he can at some point earn a second contract for it, and it's one I'm going to be rooting for.
He'll be a top 20 pick in the NBA draft. I mean, just look at the UConn game aside. UConn is just a different beast. We'll treat them like they are the quadruple A of the NCAA if the NCAA is triple A. But against Iowa State, 29 points, 30 points against Duquesne, 26 against Moorhead. Then the Big Ten tournament, 34 against Wisconsin, 40 against Nebraska, 28 against Ohio State, 25 against Iowa leading into that tournament. What he was able to accomplish this season near the end when all the pressure was really starting to mount really showcased to me that he is that dude. He is the guy that you put the game on his back and he will find a way to win that particular basketball game. So I really just look at his game. I think he's a top 15 pick in this really rough NBA draft. It's one of the weakest classes that we've seen in a very long time. And I think that's going to benefit Terrence Shannon, even with his age. But he has the speed that not a lot of guys have in the NBA. He has the physicality of guys that play in the NBA today. And it's just all about his defensive acumen as a one on one defender in the NBA. If he can prove that, the sky's the limit on his career in terms of being a top three on a championship caliber NBA team. So it is great to see. And Terrence, like you said with Marcus, he's going to be one hell of a recruiting pitch for Illinois basketball coming up. So I'm very excited to see his NBA career unfold after all of this drama goes away with his court case, maybe in May or early June. Luckily, the NBA draft is pretty late July because the NBA finals gets done pretty late in the summer.
Now, Austin, I know you said Terrence was going to be the last guy, but I think there's one more guy we should kind of give out a grade to, and that's Brad Underwood. How would you grade how he and the staff performed over the season?
I would give him an A this year. I There were moments in the season where I'm like, "What are we doing here, Brad?" But overall, he has proven to me that he is the coach that might get a lifetime contract a la John Calipari and Bill Self at the University of Illinois. He seems happy. He seems to know the landscape that he wants in the transfer portal. Likes what he does in recruiting, and that's where I think that Brad is going to earn that A because he made it past that first weekend in the NCAA tournament. And I think he did everything right in that Iowa State game that you had foul trouble on Terrence, and he was able to right the ship just enough to keep Illinois ahead during that rough stretch. So I've got to give him an A.
I think I agree. I think this was by far his best performance as a coach in his entire career. He comes with his faults, absolutely, and as much credit as I was giving him for his game planning against Iowa State, we saw, bad Brad come back in the UConn game, with his inability to just kind of make adjustments when adjustments were so clearly needed. So, I mean, I think this is a season that shows once again he's not yet a top 5 coach in the country, but I'd argue this season showed me that he's at least a top 12 coach in the country. And to have Illinois be employing one of the top dozen coaches in the entire country. And, honestly, we keep getting better. And that's all I can ask for. There's a lot of Illinois fans kind of bitter about seeing our neighbors to the east, West Lafayette, you know, playing in the Final Four and trying to compete directly with them. But Matt Painter's been there forever. We're talking about it's got to be close to 20 years at this point, and now finally he's reached his Final Four. if we give Brad time, we've seen that Brad can adjust like no one else. Like, and he's at the forefront. He knows when something's not working, and he doesn't stick to what he knows and doesn't try to adjust. A la Izzo, or some of the other guys that you would kind of think of. He was the first one to transfer or to attack the transfer portal. You know we played attacking defense when he first came up for Illinois. He realized it wasn't going to work in a big time conference, so he adjusted that. This is a guy who knows that on a month to month basis, like, he's got to be paying attention to what's going on in the college basketball world. I think now he's kind of at the forefront of changing college basketball to mirror closer to what the NBA is doing. And now some people are going to like that and some people are not going to like that. But by that, I mean just kind of more wing dominated, guys who can switch in and out, pass the ball, shoot the three, just constant motion offense. I think Brad is almost leading the charge there. And yeah, he's got some issues to work on, but I'm super happy with Brad. I'm happy for him. Obviously, I don't know. There's not many coaches out there who get more heat from their fan bases than Brad does, and including against this after this UConn game. You're hearing people blame Brad, which again, I'm not saying he didn't deserve blame, but man, for the coaching job he did this year, I'm just so incredibly satisfied. And for me, it was an easy A.
I mean, it's so weird with Brad Underwood. Within the game itself, he doesn't adapt one iota, it feels like. But everywhere off of the court of basketball, he adapts so much, whether it's the changing of his play calling styles halfway through the season, or the way he builds in the transfer portal, going from, all right, we're only going to get star players like Matthew Meyer to, hey, what if we get guys that are older that know their role at a lower program? He adapts that way. He adapts to the different styles like booty ball, talking with Jay Wright. And it's just awesome to see a coach that doesn't complain about NIL, that doesn't complain about the transfer portal. A guy that showcased that he's so progressive in that space is only going to lead to great things for Illinois basketball because you don't have a curmudgeon off the court to deal with.
And just Austin, I actually lied. I said Brad Under would be the last thing we grade, but I have one more A plus to give, and that's to the people and community of Illini Cast. Jen chimed in
Absolutely.
earlier. Hey, thanks for your work. Now that we've kind of reached our off season, Austin and I, we have a lot to kind of reflect on. We started this show in August, I believe, right before the football season, and here we are. We just passed 600 subscribers on YouTube. We're almost at 700 on X, and if you're not subscribing to either of those, please do. It helps us out a ton. But just the immense growth that we've gotten on our show and our support, I can't tell you how much it means. Some of Austin knows, and I'll be very quick about it. I The inspiration of the show came to me because about a year ago I got into a very serious car accident, and I was my speech was very off, and you kind of hear the ticks now about it. But my doctor told me that I needed to challenge myself and just kind of go out there and communicate and talk to the as much as I can so that the neurons in my brain started firing again. And so this was a huge undertaking, and Austin, I'm so grateful to you for joining me on this venture. And Brant, the CEO of Big Banter Sports, I want to give him a shout out because he gave me this opportunity to talk Illini sports. But more than anything else, I just want to thank you guys for watching. We had 3,300 people watch that last video on the Jake Davis commitment. And I can't tell you how much that just motivates me to just continue getting better every single day, every single video, and just want to make sure that we put out a product that you guys really really enjoy. And I feel confident in our abilities, Austin's abilities, and now our allegiance with Armchair Illini, that as a team, that we're going to do as much as we can for the Illini community.
Absolutely. It's been a fun ride throughout this academic year. I know baseball and softball are still going on. So we'll be talking about that after this basketball season as well. But throughout this football season and basketball season, there's been some huge ups and downs in the programs for Illinois sports. And thank you for joining our ride this season and uh, trusting us with analysis over tough issues like the Darren Shannon news, and also allowing us to talk about some fun things as well with different interviews with our fellow Big Banter people and Armchair Illini people as well. So thank you to our guests this year as well. So it's been a fun ride, and Sonny, I'm glad to be a part of your journey of healing and everything. So that's been fun to see you develop as well. So back to health, full health. So thank you for allowing me to be on this journey as well.
Check it out, Chimes, and you guys are always so positive. Thanks for the fun season. I know a couple of people who might disagree with you.
I
You know,
disagree with you a little bit because I'm negative myself sometimes when a line of football season hits.
yeah, I
But
think football season Austin's a little bit more negative, and the comment section doesn't seem to like that I didn't pick the Illini to win every single time out. And I mean, I'll be honest. When I saw that UConn tape for the first time, I knew we were in trouble, and I hate that it played out the way that it did. But check it out. You're one of the guys who is always in here talking to us, and I see you chiming in on other Illini channels. I'm not just saying from us. I'm telling you from the Illini basketball podcast, and I'm sure the other Illinois content creators. Like, we succeed because of people like you. Offering feedback, making conversation with us. That's what's so important and so valuable. And all you guys who are going to respond to this in the comments later. Simeon, Gregory. Those are the names that jump out. And I know I'm forgetting some, but it's just because I'm trying to think too fast. But thank you all for watching so much. And we may be entering the off season, but it's not quite off season, because I will tell you guys I've got a interview lined up talking about the women's basketball team. They play in their WBIT championship, I believe, tomorrow evening against Villanova. And then it's on to baseball. And then we're what, 2.5 weeks away from spring football. And
April 20th is the
A-
spring game.
April 20th. So we'll continue to provide you, with Illini content. Austin and I are going to work around the details of, whether we're going to do a more set schedule during the off season. But obviously follow at IlliniCast on X, and we can keep you updated on what schedule we're going to kind of decide during the off season. But I just want to say, frankly, thank you all so much for watching, especially for those of you who are watching an hour 7 minutes in. This experience has been one of the most positive things I've ever had to do in my life, and it's because of you guys.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for watching. We'll be here for all the breaking news of Illini sports, as well as covering some of the lesser known athletes in terms of baseball, softball, women's basketball, volleyball, even. So we'll be covering it all throughout this off season. And then there's always breaking news with this portal and NIL funds as well. So we'll cover it and we'll just figure out the schedule, figuring out when that breaking news happens and when to catch us live. So follow Illini Cast on YouTube and on Twitter. And for the last time in this college basketball season, thank you so much. This has been the Illini Cast.